The scariest movie was last night of the Halloween season after the Philadelphia 76ers handed the Detroit Pistons their first win of the season. Are the Sixers at their worst right now in 2024? We're going to break it all down coming up.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, you're Locked On with Philadelphia 76ers. Kayla Santiago alongside Keith Pompey with you all each and every day. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On 76ers Daily Newsletter, the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. So make sure you go check it out now. That's Locked On 76ers Newsletter. And you can start the season with a big return to FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $100 and $50 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So there is a lot to unpack in the Sixers handing a victory to the Detroit Pistons. First and foremost, how did that even happen? Because this is probably the most embarrassing loss in a pretty long time. Not only that, Tobias Harris goes back to Philadelphia. Everybody thinks it's fun to boo him, and then he has a game-high 14 rebounds. And then on the other side, you look at Jared McCain having a big impact. So, Keith, we're going to start things off here. Not happy about what happened last night. I don't think anybody could be. Can it get even worse for this team? Because we both thought there was absolutely no way that the Sixers could lose to the Pistons.
Yeah, it could get worse. If Joel Embiid and Paul George don't return for another week, it's definitely going to get worse. It's definitely going to get worse. But yeah, you're right. We looked at this Detroit Pistons team, especially the way the Sixers came off of their last, their victory against the Indiana Pacers. You felt like they finally had it figured out. And this was something that they probably could go out and beat this team. A young team, a struggling team. Tobias wasn't shooting the ball particularly well, in the first 4 games. So you felt like this was a game that they could win. But now we look at it and you see that this is a team that has a lot of problems. They can't shoot the ball. They're shooting a combined 27%. And then not only that, we can look at it and say, but guess what, Keith? Guess what, Kayla? They lost to teams who, without their best players, they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks. They lost to the Toronto Raptors, which is basically a tough spot because of Nick Nurse used to coach there. And they lost to Tobias Harris, and who's motivated. But then you look at it and you say, okay, all 3 of those teams' common denominator is a victory over the Sixers. That was it. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks, 1-3. You look at the Toronto Raptors, 1-4. You look at the Detroit Pistons, 1-4. So when you say all that, you have to say that this team is bad right now. Right now. Now, they can get better with Joel Embiid and Paul George. But when we're talking about load management and all this other stuff, it's going to be a struggle on nights that these guys aren't there. And I don't even know. I mean, they're 2 great players. But when you're losing to these teams, that's not a good sign for the 76ers.
I can tell you all right now, I am not having fun. I was excited for the NBA season to come back, and now I look at it and say, there's no way this is happening. I must be in a nightmare right now because there's no possible way that the Sixers are losing to this team. The Pistons had 5 players in double figures. There's just really no excuse for that as well. But Keith, each and every year you look at it with this organization and with these teams, and a lot of the conversation is, well, they need a lot of time to gel together. It seems like year after year, the Sixers are really kind of intertwining a lot of different players in that core group. And I know that we're not talking about Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, but so many other guys. Caleb Martin coming in new. Kelly Oubre was with the team last year, but now has to get used to kind of everybody. Paul George coming in brand new. A lot of your bench pieces brand new. So there is a true statement that there is going to take some time for these guys to get together, but they're professional basketball players. Losing to the Detroit Pistons with Tyrese Maxey on their team, I don't know how you can make an excuse for that. Yes, they're new, and yes, there's a lot of switching to this unit, But at the same time, I mean, this is just a disgrace right now.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I mean, it is. It's a disgrace. And you know what? I get what people are saying, but you know, you have you have three starters who were on the team last year, and Kyle Lowry, Tyrese Maxey, and Kelly Oubre, right? Andre Drummond was on the team 3 years ago, rather. So you have Caleb Martin, and I get it, but you know what? This is something that they set out to do. And they said that we're going to go out and we're going to go free agent hunting. We're going to get these people. We're going to do whatever we can. And now all of a sudden, when it's struggling, then they want to say, well, you got to give us time. We got to do this. We got to do that. You know, you really can't have it both ways. Now, if you knew that this was going to be a problem, what you should have done is probably try to bring some people back that you had last year, right? Do that, and then go ahead and try to go after Paul George or something like that. But because you would have had the other people's bird rights. So now it's like, you know, yeah, I mean, that's a problem. But here's another problem. Like, a lot of these guys are older, and they're not the people that they were 5 years ago. And I think that's what they're running into. The thing about the Toronto Raptors, and the same thing about the Detroit Pistons, they are young teams. They got out and ran. They were physical with them. They couldn't match those teams' physicality, nor could they match their athleticism.
Let's just go over to how even more bad this is, because the Pistons are a young team with nothing to lose at this point. People are going to expect them to lose, so they're going to give it all they got. They're going to be a young, scrappy team. And the 76ers just cannot handle it last night. So the Pistons have lost 8 straight games against the Sixers and haven't won in Philly since March 4th of 2017. Clearly, those streaks were snapped a night ago. But since 2017, this team has been able to defeat the Pistons. And the Pistons haven't gotten any better. Let me tell you that. Now, yes, they're young. They have Cade. He's a really good player. And they have other pieces that are complimenting him. But how do you lose to a team that hasn't gotten the win on the season? Nobody wants to say that their team is the one that gave another squad the first win of the year. I know it's early on, but right now they're shooting poorly from 3 too. Nick Nurse also saying that they didn't take enough open threes. To me, they're just not accurate from beyond the arc. Nothing is clicking. And we talked about chemistry in the preseason. Well, this is the squad that was trying to gain that chemistry in the preseason, and it's only been there in an overtime battle so far this year.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, he, like Nick Nurse also said that they were passing up on some threes, right? They weren't getting open ones. They were also passing up on them, but accuracy was the main problem. I mean, they literally missed 20 of 28 threes. So I get what he's saying, and sometimes you got to say something to make it sound a little bit better, or maybe not as bad. But the problem was the shots that they took, they were missing them badly. So, yeah, I mean, the Sixers team just has a lot of problems right now. I mean, we look at it, and even like this. So Tyrese Maxey had 32 points on 12 for 25 shooting, right? His teammates shot 21 for 54. But even that was misleading because they ended the game on a 10-0 run in garbage time. Like, Detroit wasn't even trying to stop them. So, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things where it was bad. It was just, I don't know. Like, you know, and again, we can go back and we can say Joel didn't play. We can say that Paul George didn't play. But at the same time, these are 2 of the worst teams in the NBA that they lost to, and which makes right now the Sixers one of the worst teams in the NBA.
And to me, going off of that too, it doesn't seem like, oh, everything's just going to click and everything's going to be fantastic when Joel Embiid and Paul George come back. And it's going to be better, you think, but it's still going to take some time for this team to really gel. So, Keith, right now, clearly the players just not able to keep out with the Pistons. When do you put the blame on Nick Nurse, though? Do you have this loss right now more on the blame of the players or the coaching? I know it can be a little bit of both, but who are you really looking at to say, okay, this is a big reason why the Philadelphia 76ers were not able to come out on top last night?
Right now, I will put the blame on the players who don't want to play. One of them, Joel Embiid. And then I would have to put the blame on Daryl Morey before I put the blame on Nick Nurse. The reason being is it's like, you know, the roster was supposed to be the biggest and best roster the Sixers had in a long time, right? Well, they're shooting 27.7% from three. They can't grab rebounds. They can't do this. They can't keep up with these young guys. So that's all on the president of basketball ops. And then also the one thing is, you know, Joel Embiid's not able to play, but he played in the Olympics, but he's not able to play. So you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's Nick Nurse's problem right now because he can only go with the roster that he was given. And apparently they can't shoot, they can't rebound, and they can't defend.
They can't do everything they said they could do in preseason and training camp. That is the big problem right now. It's really bad when Tobias Harris is out rebounding everybody on the Philadelphia 76ers. And we are going to talk about his return coming up. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com today. And we have to talk about Thursday night football. The Texans and the Jets will battle it out tonight at 8:15 p.m. The 6-2 Texans taking on the New York Jets. And right now, FanDuel has the Jets as favorites in this contest by a very slim margin, -1.5. So if you agree or want to push a little bit on the Texans at +1.5, make sure you head over to FanDuel.com today. You will not want to miss it. And all the other bets on every NFL game. Of course, these bets do change day by day, so make sure you head over to FanDuel right now to place your bets. America's #1 sportsbook. Be sure to visit FanDuel today to place all of your sports bets. There's no better place than FanDuel to do so. All right, so the homecoming, not too shabby for Tobias Harris. 18 points, 14 rebounds, higher rebounds than anybody on the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's interesting because, you know, when they play kind of the run back on the big screen at Wells Fargo Center, you see a bit of Paul Reed and Tobias Harris. There's a lot of boos, but Tobias before the game saying, everything that I was able to do here and everything that I could do in Philadelphia really made me a better person and a better player. It pushed him and made him learn more about himself. And granted, they didn't get to the NBA final and get a ring like they wanted to, and he even admitted that, but he said they were the most growing years of probably his life. He was able to stay there for a while and really grow. So Tobias Harris kind of getting a little bit of revenge last night, Keith, going into the building in Philadelphia, getting booed. He said, I don't care. I'm going to help my team get the first win of the year.
Yeah, he really he got payback. It was funny because like they booed him and they were booing him loud. It was like, you know, in a way I didn't think he deserved those type of boos because, you know, I get it when Ben Simmons did what he did. I understood that, right? But Tobias was just a guy who was in a bad situation. Did he struggle some games? Yeah, he struggled some games. But it wasn't like the Ben Simmons situation, right? So, but the crazy part, you are 100% correct that in regards to Tobias getting the last laugh because, you know, we look at it, he had 18 points on 8 for 18 shooting to go for season high 14 rebounds, right? Now, but the crazy thing is his play picked up as the game progressed. He was limited to 4 points on 2 for 7 shooting in the first half, right? But then he scored 7 points while making 3 of 5 shots in the third. And then he added 7 points on 3 for 6 shooting while grabbing 5 rebounds in the fourth quarter. So Tobias started heating up as the game went along. And this is what he said about the fans. This is a crowd that boos their own team. So it's just like kind of how it is. But tonight, I thought I did a good job of staying with it all night, not letting it get to me, just really embracing my teams and these guys, right? He went on to say, and I thought my team did a really good job of keeping me on track. And he said, one of them said, hey, we need you. Don't worry about that. And he said, I think it's funny for a lot of guys. They were looking at me like, you good? And I'm like, brother, I've been through this for a minute now. So I already know what it is. So it's kind of crazy. Like he was just basically saying, this is nothing new. And as the game went along, he started heating up. And the Sixers had no answers.
They did not. And listen, I do understand where people can get frustrated with Tobias Harris. I was one of the people last year. He's right. When he was in his own building saying, I'm used to this, fans booed Tobias Harris when he was having a bad game in Philadelphia. It's nothing new. It's what the fans do. It's what they like to do. And honestly, I love it because if you're having a bad game, boo them to the locker room and hopefully it gives them more momentum and more power to come out there in the second half and come out and win the game. But you're right. You look at it and you say, okay, guys like Ben Simmons coming in basically said a lot of bad things about the organization, didn't come to play. Even James Harden in a situation where I think a lot of people could actually understand where Daryl Morey kind of wasn't fully truthful with him. But at the same time, James Harden didn't end up approaching it the way that he really should have. Okay, boos to him. I understand that. Tobias Harris, listen, he got paid at the end of the day, so I'm sure he's totally fine with it. Did he deserve a max contract? No. Was there situations where I was ripping my hair out when Tobias was on the floor? Absolutely. But overall, he gave it all to his organization. And I think not only Tobias's play lifting up the team, but just the Pistons last night really playing as a team, Tobias being a part of that. And it had to be huge for him too. I mean, that's the last thing the 76ers wanted. Not only do you get beaten by the Pistons, but Tobias Harris comes back and says, listen, you know me, you let me go. This is exactly what I'm going to do. So good on Tobias Harris. I can't stand watching that, though, last night with the 76ers coming out on top. And it was a big night for him. Do you think that he will continue this, Keith, throughout the season? Or do you think that the Pistons, coming into this game were the younger, scrappy team that went out there and cared about playing the game of basketball?
I mean, it's still kind of early. I mean, you don't know, what's going to happen. But at the same time, it just seemed like he was hitting his shots towards the end when they needed it, right? I think let's face it, he's making a lot of money. They got him as a veteran guy. He's going to get opportunities to do it. But the problem is, it's like, right now, this is really like Cade Cunningham's team. Then is Jaden Ivory's. And then then Tobias is like, the old head on the squad that they really look up to. So, we'll see. Now, the problem is some of the teams that they went up against were way better beforehand, like the Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat. They have guys who can shut them down. The Sixers just didn't. Now, it might have been different if Paul George played to see what would have happened. But you're putting KJ Martin, you're putting Kelly Oubre on him. After a while, he's going to be able to get to his spots and do what he needs to do against those guys.
Yeah, Paul George in this game and the Sixers lost, we'd be in some real trouble. Start panicking because right now I'm not in super panic mode yet. I mean, you really can't be until Joel Embiid and Paul George come back in to play with the 76ers. But what I will say is really outside of Tyrese Maxey, right now, this is not a good team. It's a bad team. You lose to the Pistons. And I know people are not going to be happy about that. You want to see the positivity, the uplift. It's early in the season. And I don't think it's an overreaction. Keith, would you say that it's an overreaction to look at this as a bad team? To me, it's not right now because you just lost to the Pistons after having a great OT game to the Pacers where you really didn't lock in, and it was a lot of Tyrese Maxey later on in that overtime period.
No, I wouldn't say it's an overreaction. I mean, here's the thing. Like, we do know that they're going to be a better team with the two guys on there, right? We do know that. But how much better? You know, the thing is, it's kind of like when we look at this team and we compare them to the Boston Celtics, we compare them to the New York Knicks, we compare them to other teams. They're right now, their core, well, their role players are better than what the Sixers are, right? And when we look at the Sixers schedule early on, it's not like they had a hard schedule. I mean, you know, the Milwaukee Bucks were supposed to be the team to beat. The Milwaukee Bucks are what, 1-3. So then they go to Toronto. That's supposed to be a win. Then they go to Indiana. They do beat Indiana. And we thought that Indiana was going to beat them. But at the same time, it was one of those things where Indiana just got boat raced by the Knicks, right? Who got boat raced by Boston. So then they come here and they play Detroit, and Detroit was getting knocked out by everyone. And then Detroit is up by 21 in the second half against them. So you're right. Yeah, I mean, it's not an overreaction. This team is bad. And especially now, granted, they're going to get better when the two guys come back. But at the same time, Joel already said he's not playing in back-to-backs. And they already said that they're going to rest Paul George. So we're looking at it like, yo, maybe this team needs to make a trade to get everything in order.
I can't wait till trade deadline where I'm just constantly scrolling, waiting to see now what Shams will end up putting out after Woj retired from his role too. But yeah, you look at it, it's just tough right now. And there is more time for this unit to be able to play together, but I am not liking what I'm seeing. And everybody knows, if you watch Sixers basketball, that you've needed other guys to step up in the past and they haven't. Right now, it's Tyrese Maxey and everybody else is falling behind. But there is some positivity to be able to spin into this Pistons loss. Believe it or not, people. Maybe a player that could make a little bit more of an impact and really help this unit win some games coming up after a big-time loss against the Pistons. All right, so we look at it right now. Jared McCain had 12 points in that game last night, and he's somebody that we touched on really throughout the preseason and the beginning of the year, saying we don't know how much playing time he'll get. We don't think he's going to get too much, but really liked what I saw from him last night in a short sample size. Keith, you think that he should get more minutes, that Nick Nurse should maybe push him to play more, especially without PG and Joel Embiid in the lineup? How do you kind of analyze that with Jared McCain looking to get a little bit more minutes down the line with this struggling offense?
I mean, I think it's not going to hurt, right? I mean, the thing is, I think you need to figure out what he can do. I mean, it seems like they really like him. He plays in spurts. Like when you look at it, he had 12 points on 3 for 9 shooting. He played 21 minutes and 49 seconds. He was a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. He had 3 assists, 3 rebounds, and he had 1 turnover, right? In 21 minutes and 49 seconds. Now, the thing about it is, in the fourth quarter, he shot 2 for 5. He played the entire fourth quarter. Some people may look at it and say, hey, you know what? The other team was resting starters. They were doing this. They were doing that. Well, Tim Hardaway played 9 minutes of the quarter. The same with Tobias Harris. The same with Jaden Ivey. So he was in there trying to attack. He was doing whatever he could. But when I look at the other guys, I look at Eric Gordon. I look at Kyle Lowry. You know, I look at Reggie Jackson, who has yet to play. I do think that McCain is showing us that he's young. He gives his all. That he needs to play. I mean, honestly, I think he does. I think he needs to play because they started coming back while he was in the game. When he wasn't in the game, they was getting blown out. So, you know, he's not the quickest guy, nor is he the most athletic, but he plays with a lot of heart and hustle. And I think that he needs to get more opportunities.
My worry with McCain is on the defensive end, and I've kind of implored that throughout the preseason and the regular season. But at this point, the Sixers aren't even playing any great defense, so why don't you just put them in and see how it works out, right? It's been a struggle to even watch them right now. But you look at it and you say, okay, Jared McCain maybe gets some more minutes coming forward, especially with the absence of PG. Which rotation would you like to see him in? Obviously, if Nick Nurse does give him more minutes, he might be in a different, but do you want to see him in with Kyle Lowry right off the bat? Do you want to wait until Tyrese Maxey kind of gets that second win, or Tyrese is staying in the first quarter and then they bring McCain in? Where do you feel like Jared McCain will succeed best in those rotations going forward?
You know, I don't know. Like, now again, when I say play him more, like I think that he worked well in that rotation where it was him, Kyle Lowry, I believe Yabusele was out there, Caleb Martin, and I forget who the fifth guy was, but that's where he looked good in. And see, the thing is, you are right. He does scare you on the defensive end. You look at Kyle Lowry, he had 2 steals and 1 block, right? But when you look at Eric Gordon tonight, he was a minus 14 in 16 minutes. Whereas you look at Jared McCain, he was a plus 2 in 21 minutes, 49 seconds. So my thing is, if Eric Gordon is giving you nothing on the defensive end and he's not making shots, I think you got to give McCain his minutes. Like how you were going to have him in a rotation, whatever you want to do with him, you got to give it to McCain. I mean, because now don't get me wrong, there's going to be nights where Gordon does hit shots and you may not play him as much. But aside from that, you look at it, you know, neither one of them are giving you much on the defensive end, but one guy is attacking the basket, one guy is getting shots. You need that type of play.
And it's interesting right now because the 76ers team, we're talking about, we've even said this throughout the week too. Just try new rotation guys. Maybe play guys more minutes, see what they can do. Do you feel like at this point right now, and I'm talking about a team that has no PG and no Joel Embiid, that they have nothing to lose and they can just try a ton of different rotations and see what's happening because they're already losing games? Or do they have a lot to lose because they're projected to be this good team with Embiid and PG? Where do you kind of see the Sixers falling right now, especially without their 2 superstars?
Yeah, I think they got a lot to lose right now because when we look at it, you look at it, the Cleveland Cavaliers right now are 5-0. The Boston Celtics are 4-1. The Bulls are 3-2, so is the Orlando Magic. Now, I know it's still early, but when I see that Cleveland is 5-0 and Boston's 4-1, and you look at the Sixers right now, the Sixers are tied for the second worst record in the East, right? So they're behind. You can't continue to keep falling behind. You can say you're going to gamble, you're going to do this, we're going to get our guys back. But the problem is like, who knows? Cleveland may this could be a mirage. But Cleveland was a team that no one was talking about. We were talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. We were talking about the Knicks. We were talking about Boston. We were talking about Indiana. Now Cleveland is up there. So that's another team that I think the Sixers will have to contend with. So with that being said, you got to start trying to get wins, especially like right about now. It's kind of like they're going to go to Memphis and who knows, let's say Joel and PG play. Well, it's going to be their first game. Well, they got to get acclimated with Joel in the in-game situation, right? So then after that, you go to Phoenix. Then you go to the Clippers. You go to LA. Now, some people might say, you know, they could beat these teams, but they're going to be in LA for 4 days. And everyone loves being in LA. So there's a lot of things. They don't have, I don't feel like they can. I think they're 1-3 right now. They got to try to win games. And you can't say that everything is cool.
You look at it too, you mentioned the Cavs, the Magic, also a team that could really bump up a little bit if things go wrong with other teams that happen and sending guys out. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. Yes, the 76ers want to get to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. You're not going to do that if you come into the play-in tournament once again and you're a lower seed playing a higher seed in the first round. It is not going to happen. So, yes, do they need to keep Embiid and Paul George healthy? Absolutely. But this other squad has to find out how to win basketball games without them too. I'm not saying it's going to be every single game, but when you lose against the Pistons, you look like a mockery to the rest of the league right now. Not only are you getting fined because your coach is not being transparent with the league, not only are you getting a technical foul because of rally tell after the game, now you lose to the Detroit Pistons. Keith, we thought there was no drama, and now it's a laughing stock right now. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, it's a bad loss. It's a bad loss. Now, it'll get better when these two guys come back, but at the same time, it was a bad loss. I mean, 27.7% on three. That's all you need to know.
It has to get better. It has to get better as they will take on the Grizzlies later this week. Well, thanks for listening to our rant session, everybody, because that's what this turned into. The 76ers lose to possibly the worst team in the NBA, and now we're going to try to get back into the win column against the Grizzlies. Thank you all so much for making Locked On 76ers a part of your day every day. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On 76ers daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Make sure you sign up for free at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On 76ers newsletter. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long after a very, very scary Halloween, not because of the holiday, but because the 76ers lost the Pistons. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you guys have a good one.